what my favorite thing is about video games? No, it's not the gameplay, the graphics, or the story to an extent, but not really the story. Though to be fair, when they're all combined together, and it just comes out so perfectly, it's just, mwah, ooh, so good. No, it's the lore found within the games that gets me the most excited. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, lore? Why lore? Or what is lore? Or what are you? Fucking nerd? And no, but I'll explain. Just give me a minute. So this video is going to be broken down into 3 parts. The first part being what lore is, the second part being the type of lore, and the third part is where I actually answer the question. So stick around. For those of you that don't know, lore isn't something that has a solid definition, at least not the one we're talking about. Like if you look up lore by its Merriam-Webster definition, it is a body of traditions and knowledge on a subject or held by a particular group, typically passed from person to person by word of mouth. Now this is more closely tied to the real world stuff like myth and folklore, but the lore I'm talking about is more closely related to the Urban Dictionary definition. Oh yeah, what a solid source of information. But the Urban Dictionary definition states, the collective history and the sum of all knowledge available about a certain fantasy or sci-fi universe. Now this is almost spot on, but I'm just going to add something to it. To me, the more accurate meaning of lore is the collective history and the sum of all knowledge available about a certain fantasy or sci-fi universe that cannot be acquired through normal means. Now what do I mean by that, you're asking? Well, if it's not directly told throughout the story and requires the player to actively seek out this information elsewhere, whether that be in game text found throughout exploring the world or media printed in the real world, then it's, in my opinion, considered lore. A good example of this is the Halo franchise and its many spin-offs. With its massive library of books like The Fall of Reach and First Strike, a handful of miniseries with my personal favorite like Halo Legends, Forward Unto Dawn, and the oh-so-memorable Nightfall. And an upcoming TV show as well being made by Showtime, with all of them being considered canon and expanding the lore within the universe with its many stories taken from different perspectives and times, for better or for worse. Let's just forget about Odd One Out. Let's just forget that ever happened. Now games with lore can vary, but normally you can narrow it down to about 3 categories. You got the bare bone games, you got the games with a little bit of meat on them, then you got your delicious, oozy, mouth-watering ribs that just melt in your mouth after every bite. It's so good. Oh god, I'm hungry. Now let's get on with the bare bone games. These games are, as the name suggests, there isn't really much to them, and at most they have is maybe a campaign, and that's really it. In this category, you got some older classics like Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, or a more recent title like Minecraft. Then you got your games that got a little bit of lore to them, just a little bit of meat, and they got stuff that makes you go, huh, that's cool, and you continue on with your day. You got your titles like Doom, Wolfenstein, and Minecraft. Finally, got your big boys with tons of deep and complex lore, the stakes of gaming, if you will. And these, you got games like the previous mentioned Halo, with its many lore-related media, Destiny having over 800 Grimoire cards, the entire Triumph tab in Destiny 2, and inscriptions on weapons and armor that further expand the universe, and, close favorite of my heart, Dark Souls, with a lore so deep and complex that it spans over 3 games, and you have people putting hundreds of hours reading over every item description and quotes from characters, and they still don't know the full extent of the lore and story. Just a side note, they actually put out a $10,000 reward for anyone who could put it together, the story, and I don't know if it's been claimed yet. Actually, I'm going to check on that right now. Huh, it has. Well, anyways. Many games can fall into these categories, but keep in mind that they're pretty broad, so there is room for you to play around and figure out which game belongs in which category. Like, personally, I believe Kingdom Hearts goes in the very little meat category, because overly complex and convoluted storyline and a manga retelling doesn't really add much to the world and only drives to add a deeper story when there's no story to begin with. Even though your friend spends an hour arguing with you trying to convince you otherwise, but you stand by your belief because you don't follow that status quo. We finally made it to the home stretch. The answer to the question you've been asking since the start of the video, I hope. Why do you love lore so much? And the answer is easy. Lore is my favorite part of games because it's just fun. When I say it's fun, I don't mean reading the lore is fun, though that can be a part of it. But what I mean is just the whole experience, from the hint of a bigger story out there to you going out and finding out more for yourself, only to find some background story on a character you love that only makes you love them more or shows you a different side of them. The reason you figure out why the world is the way it is around you and the people act the way they do. It's the fact of discovering some story you never knew about it is what makes the lore so great for me. I never would have found out about how Master Chief came to be if it weren't for me learning there was a book about him. I would have never learned of the amazing stories told by Guardians of the past in Destiny and how they contribute to the society of Guardians today. I would have never connected with bosses like Artorias or Sif, or of their rise and fall from grace, or even how I connected to such a nameless undead who has the burden of the world on their shoulders and must overcome the odds no matter how hopeless it may seem. Maybe I might do a video on Dark Souls soon. I don't know. But let me know if you guys want that. But anyways, just because a game has great lore, though, doesn't make it a great game. And the same goes the other way around. Just because it has no lore doesn't mean that it can't be a great game. I mean, Kingdom Hearts, little to no lore, but people and critics love it for the story and gameplay. While games like Destiny, despite having a deep and well thought out lore, came out to less than stellar reviews. So, if I had to end this video on some sort of note, I would say enjoy the game for what it is, but it never hurts to know more about what you enjoy so much. And thank you guys so much for watching.